The evening had started like any other, just another gathering, another round of drinks, another night where my husband played the perfect host while I played the perfect wife. The house was filled with laughter, the hum of conversation blending with the low pulse of music drifting through the speakers. The air was warm, thick with the scent of whiskey and cologne, the sharp bite of expensive liquor clinging to the rim of my glass. I sipped it slowly, watching the way my husband moved through the room, effortlessly charming, effortlessly in control. He thrived in moments like this, reveling in the attention, the admiration, the way people hung onto his every word. And yet, his gaze kept drifting back to me. Not in the usual way. Not with the easy familiarity of a man looking at his wife across a crowded room. No, tonight it was something else entirely. Something expectant. Something waiting. I felt it in the weight of his stare, the way his lips curled slightly at the edges, like he already knew something I didn't. Like he had already made a decision that I hadn't been let in on yet. And then, you should give him a little more to look at. The words were murmured low, just for me, as he brushed past, his breath warm against the shell of my ear. A slow shiver ran down my spine, my fingers tightening around my glass. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch the flicker of amusement in his eyes before he moved away, effortlessly slipping back into conversation as if he hadn't just said what he did. I swallowed, exhaling slowly, steadying myself. Give him a show. My gaze drifted across the room, settling on his best friend. He was watching me. Not obviously, not in a way that anyone else would notice, but I saw it. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long, the way he sipped his drink slower, more deliberate, the way his jaw tensed slightly when he thought no one was looking. I shouldn't have entertained it, but I did. My lips curled slightly, the faintest ghost of a smirk playing at the edges. I didn't move right away, didn't acknowledge the shift in the air, didn't do anything but sit back, my fingers tapping lightly against the stem of my glass. I didn't have to, because now I had his attention. The night stretched on, laughter growing softer, the conversations thinning as the drinks kept flowing. My husband was still watching me, still waiting, his expression unreadable but knowing. So I decided to play along. A slow shift in my seat, the smooth glide of my fingertips along the rim of my glass, the subtle tilt of my chin as I let my gaze linger just a little longer than before. His best friend noticed. I saw it in the way his throat bobbed slightly when he swallowed, in the way his fingers flexed around his drink, in the way his posture stiffened, just barely, just enough for me to catch it. I took another sip, slow, calculated, letting the warmth of the liquor burn its way down. The air in the room felt different now, charged. And from across the room, my husband smirked. The air in the room was different now, thicker, charged. I could feel the shift in energy, the unspoken challenge woven between my husband's words, between the way his best friend watched me, between the way my own pulse quickened despite my best efforts to stay composed. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I leaned back into my seat, my fingers tracing the delicate rim of my glass, my movement slow, deliberate, teasing without being obvious. The tension in the room wasn't just imagined. It was real, tangible, a steady hum beneath my skin. His best friend's grip on his drink tightened, just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. Just enough for my lips to curl, my stomach twisting with something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. I knew what my husband was doing, and I knew that I was playing right into it. You're quiet tonight. My voice was smooth, easy, laced with amusement as I tilted my chin, catching his best friend's gaze across the table. His eyes darkened just slightly, just enjoying the view. I swallowed, the warmth of the liquor lingering on my tongue. Is that so? A slow smirk. Hard not to. The words hung between us, heavy, thick with implication. I felt the heat of my husband's gaze without even looking at him. And I knew, in that moment, that I was no longer just playing along. I was all in. The next few minutes stretched, long and slow, filled with the unspoken. The hum of music in the background felt distant, like it belonged to another world, one that wasn't wrapped up in this, whatever this was. I took another sip of my drink, my throat dry despite the warmth still curling in my stomach. My husband shifted beside me, relaxed, entertained, watching. Always watching. Maybe I should excuse myself, his best friend murmured, but he didn't move. My husband chuckled. You could, but then you'd miss the best part. My breath caught, a slow shiver running down my spine. This was no longer a game. This was a test. And somehow I knew. I wasn't the one in control anymore. The moment stretched, thick and heady, pressing against my skin like a second layer. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my breath slow but measured, my entire body caught in the strange, intoxicating energy that filled the room. Are you sure you want to keep playing? His best friend's voice was lower now, smoother, but there was an edge to it. A quiet challenge wrapped in something deeper. I swallowed, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. Are you? A flicker of something dark passed behind his eyes, but he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly, his grip still firm on his drink, his gaze never once leaving mine. My husband exhaled a soft laugh beside me, amused, entertained. I think she's already made up her mind. The words sent another slow shiver through me, settling low in my stomach, coiling tighter. I had made up my mind. Long before this moment, long before the first sip of my drink, long before I had even realized that I was making a choice at all. And now, I wasn't sure there was any going back. His best friend watched me for another long moment before setting his drink down, the faint clink of glass against wood cutting through the silence. Then let's see how far you're willing to take this. I inhaled, steadying myself, but my heart was pounding, the weight of his words settling deep into my bones. This wasn't about hesitation anymore. This was about surrender. I turned my head, meeting my husband's gaze for the first time since this had started. His smirk was there, small but knowing, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't name. He was still watching, still waiting. And so was I. The tension in the air crackled like a live wire, stretched to its breaking point, and I knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The sound of ice clinking in an empty glass filled the silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on all three of us. My husband's best friend leaned forward slightly, his forearms resting against his knees, his gaze never breaking from mine. You like the attention, don't you? The question sent another ripple of heat through me, unexpected, uninvited. I licked my lips, exhaling slowly. I don't think that's the real question here. His brow lifted slightly. No. I tilted my chin just enough to let him know I wasn't backing down. The real question is, are you going to keep just watching? The air between us pulsed, the shift subtle but undeniable. My husband let out a low chuckle, shaking his head as he swirled the last of his drink. I told you she doesn't hold back. His best friend exhaled, his smirk flickering. I see that. The anticipation hung heavy, suffocating in the best way. Every breath felt stretched, every second a slow unraveling of something inevitable. I could feel the weight of both of their stares now, twin currents of expectation curling around me, sinking deeper, embedding itself beneath my skin. I took another sip of my drink, the burn of the liquor grounding me, steadying me, even as my pulse threatened to betray just how much I was caught in this moment. The sharp heat of my husband's stare met the slower, heavier pull of his best friend's, a contrast that only made my skin feel even warmer. Well? My voice was softer now, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the charged air. Who's going to make the next move? Neither of them spoke. But I saw the answer in their eyes. This wasn't a game anymore. It was a beginning. And I was ready.